It's a lot easier when you're a bit younger and dumber. And I miss that part of myself, to be honest with you. In the UK, it's 20 quid a bottle. Like, I've always thought about it that some people get paid 20 quid an hour. So, if someone's going to give you an hour of their life, bloody make it good if they're drinking your product as well. And I honestly believe in that. So you're doing 2 tons of raspberry crumble because you're pulling out 90% of the water weight, but you've got 20 tons of flavour.
Hi, Low No Nation, and welcome to this week's conversation on the Low No Drinker podcast. Today, I am chatting with the lovely Aaron Trotman, the founder and inspired mind behind the non-alcoholic wine alternative brand. A trip to the Non-World website is like an open invitation to the senses. This brand is all about flavour. It's about how these drinks make you feel and really enjoying them as part of a lifestyle. And I'm really intrigued by it. Just watching their VT made my cheeks sort of juice up with all the amazing foods that you see on there. So it was fabulous. With flavours like salted raspberry and chamomile and stewed cherry and coffee. These drinks are very unique and they taste amazing too. And it's a really hard job that I have in my life, but I've got 2 glasses right here in front of me now.
The suffering continues.
I know it's a hard life, Aaron, but somebody's got to do it, right?
Totally.
So thank you for joining me, my darling. I am really excited, as I said to you before we press record, to get to know more about you and these amazing, amazing drinks. I always like to start by asking my guests to share a bit about themselves. So, start where you want to start. But what is it that led you to make these crazy and unique and gorgeous drinks?
Well, thanks for having me. You've set me up for hopefully success here with all those kind words. Um, so it started in London actually, at the Clove Club. So uh,
Oh,
I had the wine pairing and my wife had the non-alcoholic pairing. And during that meal, I tried my wife's drinks and I was like, these are really cool and really interesting, these non-alc pairings. And that was in 2017. And then our thing was going and eating, ticking off bucket list restaurants and traveling
right.
around and doing all those sorts of things. And I was kind of like, why can't you buy those non-alcoholic pairing drinks or that style in a bottle? Because they're really good. They're really interesting. Um, and they weren't very accessible. So they live and died in the restaurants. And, the meals are very expensive. They're $500, depending on where they are. They're really long. They take ages to get into, even if you can get into them. And I was just like, that feels like a good idea. I'll just do that. I hadn't done any market research. And sure enough, it worked out and there was a need for it and a want for it. And it was just a bit of blind faith and jumped off the cliff and built the plane on the way down. And it seems to be sort of flying, I suppose. So it's going okay.
I love these stories where people, excuse me, I might sound a bit croaky. I'm getting over a cold, so excuse me if I get all gruff. I'm going for the husky, sexy vibe. I love these stories where founders are like, I went somewhere or I did something and it was rubbish, and I thought I can do that better, and so I did. And you come from, you didn't know what you were doing. You didn't know how to get it done. You just went, I'm sure I can figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
where do you get the cojones to just go, all right, let's just make it happen?
It's a lot easier when you're a bit younger and dumber. And I miss that part of myself, to be honest with you, because you don't go, oh, what about our decisions that we're making now? And is it going to land? And how are we going to distribute that idea? And all those sorts of things. It was just like,
Right.
this feels good. Let's just go for it. Yeah, this is bad.
Let's just wing
Um,
it, see what happens.
yeah, totally. And then by the time we went from a 20-liter pot and it started getting pretty serious into a 1,500-liter kettle and now 15,000-liter tank, it's still all the same. But I was just like, I know why no one's done this before because it's really hard. It's really shit.
You're like, oops, okay.
I'm like, oh, we're all in, so we'll just have to figure it out.
Oh my God. So look, there are so many ways that I want to take this conversation because there's so much that I want to ask you about. I want to ask you about the flavor combinations and obviously your love of food and ingredients and how that came about and how you put it together. I want to ask you about Australia, which is where you are, for anyone who didn't recognize the accent, and the differences over there. I want to ask you about your personal journey as well. So there's a lot of stuff that I want to cover without sort of bombarding you. But let's start with the drinks themselves. Let's start with the brand. So tell me a bit about what's in the range, and how you came about these amazing combinations. Because I've got, for those of you who are watching the video, I've got some behind me here, and I'm tasting at the moment is it cinnamon and yuzu?
Toasted cinnamon and yuzu is the
Toasted
official name.
cinnamon and yuzu. And then the other one that I've got is the salted raspberry and chamomile. And these are amazing, amazing drinks with great flavor combinations that you don't find in many places. How did you get to this point?
So to start with, we just made yummy drinks. We were like, this is cool. Like these are unexpected combinations. Until we got a little bit more sophisticated and actually figured out we were drinks brands and hired drinks people. They're like, what do you exist for? And I'm like, I don't know. We just make yummy drinks. Funnily enough, but it ended up being that the wine alternative in the category, and the importance of it is that there's a fruit, tannin, salt, and acid component to the drink. So acid was always important, and it's in all the drinks, and that comes from a wine base. So it's a Semillon and Chardonnay blend, but it doesn't go through fermentation. So that's verjus. So they pick it about 3 weeks earlier. Um, so that's the base. And then salt's really important to balance out sweetness and also bring everything together as well. So that's what's consistent across the entire range, that there's a salinity component, but there's an acid component. So verjus in all of them, but sometimes you might swap out that salt component for olive brine or soy sauce or whatever it is for that time. To go to the salted raspberry and chamomile. So then it's freeze dried raspberries. They're real raspberries. They're whole. We buy raspberries in season and then we get them freeze dried. So we just brought 20 tons of raspberries. And then when they're freeze dried, they go to 2 tons. So you're getting 2 tons of raspberry
Wow.
crumble because you're pulling out 90% of the water weight, but you've got 20
Yeah.
tons of flavor. So there's just been some beautiful accidents along the way that we end up finding that was the best flavor, but also worked out really well for scale when we had to get to scale, and we are at scale, that we have used preservative-free preservative methods to get the flavor into the drinks. And then what's really important to me is that we weren't ever chasing a mock or a mimic version of alcohol as well. So the unexpected finish that you're experiencing now, that's what's really important, because you're like, okay, I'm having a whole new experience altogether. And that's what I had at the start, where so the chamomile gives you that interesting finish in the salted raspberry and chamomile. And that, you've got a citrus with the dehydrated orange and the yuzu, but then you've got a cinnamon finish. And you're like, whoa, what's going on here? But it's really interesting, and it's a conversation starter, and it's all just part of socializing, right? You're talking about what you're doing, what you're having, you're sharing it, all those sorts of things.
Were you always into food and flavor combinations? Were you always like a foodie kind of person, or did it only start to evolve when you started putting these drinks together?
So I grew up in the country, and I used to have my steak well done until I was probably like 21. So, but I like flavor, but we call them bogans here. So I was a bit of a bogan, to be honest. And then I remember I went to Nobu. I became mates with a friend of mine now, obviously. And he was like, oh, try raw fish. I'm like, nah, man, no way. And sure enough, I'm like, oh, this is delicious. It's so good. But, I was having it at like a Nobu or something. So I was like,
Yeah.
I was always, when I was trying weird stuff, I was always like having it in the best possible scenario. So when I went to Dinner by Heston in London, I was like, cool, I'm going to get pigeon. I'm going to get frog's legs. If I'm ever going to try them, I'm going to do them when Heston's cooked them. So then I started to get more adventurous as I got older. And then once I started to travel more, and especially Europe, I love Europe. Then that's when it started to really develop, and just interesting experiences and giving people interesting experiences probably were the most interesting thing to me, and not being boring really. It's like, and that's part of our brand as well. It's like, if other brands going this way, we're going that way, sort of thing, and that's always been the case as well.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, great philosophy. If you're going to have these weird and wonderful foods for the first time, have them cooked by the people that do them the best in the world, right? But absolutely, I don't think anybody could ever accuse your brand of being boring in any way, shape, or form, from the way you present it on your website to what you put forward in your social media, down to the drinks themselves. You've got quite a range, and it's slightly different in Australia than it is available over here. Not to put you on the spot, because I'm sure you're not uploading websites and that sort of thing. What's the sort of difference in what you're providing over here and what we can get in the UK versus what people can get in Australia?
So for us, when we initially export, we always go in with the core range. So that's 1, 3, and 7 that you have behind you. And notice we've got a little 2 there as well. So that's part of our seasonal or capsule ranges as well. So you're very lucky. We go into all new markets with the 1, 3, and 7. So there's the blush, white, and darker occasion essentially that we're going after. It's like, look, let the colors do the work for now to match the occasion, and then people will have the drinks, hopefully fall in love with them, and then we'll bring in new things. And then for us, as we kind of spend longer in the market, we would commercialize. So some of the top tier places that we get to brag about might not be happy that we're in another place. So we go, hey, we've got this other stuff for you as well. So we use it very strategically from that point of view. So it's like, yeah, the more crazy and interesting flavors. I'm not saying that the other ones aren't, but the other ones can get pretty wild. Those ones we sort of hold back, and then we start to bring them in, and we do it a bit later. But also for those as well, is they're really hard to scale. So for the non-2 that you have in the background there, like we get 2.5 tons of pears, and we've got to roast every single one of those pears. It takes about 4 days to do it. So
Wow.
that so for that, it has to be purely seasonal, and it has to be when they're in season. So the pears are where we need them to be, and the run will be the run. We can't do more than that. So again, we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. Essentially, that'd be the worst thing ever. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and I understand, especially if you're using these amazing fresh ingredients, and especially being somewhere like Australia where you're growing a much sunnier quality of fresh fruit and botanicals than we generally grow over here due to the climate and things. You need to be able to treat those the best way possible at the right times.
Of
I'm just
course.
having a look on your website right now as we're talking, and I can see you've got a lovely set that you see, your everyday set, which people can drop on and buy. Obviously, I'll put up the details, but over here it's uk.non.world, and you can get a lovely set with your 1, 3, and 7, which is your salted raspberry and chamomile, which is the one that I have here, which has got a lovely little carbonation to it. It's a feels like a real special occasion kind of drink when I had it. And then the non-3, which is the toasted cinnamon and yuzu, which has the appearance of, sort of, you're just a normal looking wine or lightly sparkling, but as I said, that flavor bomb that gets you. And the non-7, which is stewed cherry and coffee, which sounds, I haven't opened that one yet because I didn't want to open too many at once. But that sounds intense. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that one we call it kind of Melbourne in the glass. It's very, I think it works for like New York in the glass and London in the glass as well. So it's a
Okay.
real mismatch. So with that one, we're roasting cherries in the oven, so they're frozen. So that's giving that fruit component I was talking about earlier. But then we lay a spice blend on top. So it's pink peppercorn, garam masala, nutmeg, and allspice. Now, as the cherries that are frosting in the oven, the spices are blooming and slightly roasting, and then they'll embed, and then they're into the cherries, and then the skins will blister just a little bit of char. So from there, we can sous vide those cherries, and then we'll cold brew our own coffee as well. So what we want is more of a chocolatey finish. There's not a high level of caffeine in the drink. It's just there more for the flavor. Cold brew ended up giving us that finish that we wanted. We didn't want a big intense espresso hit, so we end up doing cold brew, and then the verjus for the acid and the salt as well. So that one's a real nice. It's probably coming into the perfect weather for it over there now. Perfect
Yeah.
with some roast meat, some barbecue mushrooms or roasted mushrooms as well. Just big, earthy umami flavors. And there's like the best thing ever is with tiramisu. It's like the best.
Sold. So
Mm.
anytime someone tells something is good with tiramisu, I am absolutely sold. It's my favorite. Yeah, absolutely. It is jumper weather or sweater weather over here now as things are turning, and people are looking for those deeper flavors. So when it comes to non-alcoholic, alcohol-free drinks, one of the biggest comments that I receive from people all the time is, they're looking for that depth of flavour. Particularly wine drinkers seem to find that they're struggling the most. Somebody emailed me just a couple of days ago and said, I've been sober curious for 2 years, and the only thing that I keep going back for is red wine because I can't find those flavours that really replace that moment for me. Was that one of the reasons why you've gone with some of these deeper flavors?
Sorry, yeah, it is. But we'd never go, hey, we look at the ingredients that we want to use and making an interesting experience. We don't go, oh, hey, we need to make a bread. Like we don't think of it like that. And a market fit, we don't look at the market fit. The market doesn't know what they want. You just make it and you put it in and you do what you do and you get that. It shows up the places that you want it to, and it's pretty simple like that. So we definitely avoid that, and I think that the red is the biggest challenge because just to make it really simple with wine, you have a singular ingredient, so and then goes through fermentation. That's wine, right? I like to think about it as if you had, say, cabbage, so raw white cabbage, not very nice. You ferment it, becomes sauerkraut, becomes really delicious. So if you try to remove that fermentation, you land in this middle ground of no man's land, which doesn't, you're neither here nor there, essentially. So if you have multiple ingredients and you have building blocks and you can have more things that you can tune up and down to increase the palate weight and the experience and the finish and all those sorts of things, you have a lot more control over it. And I think that a lot of people love wine. They absolutely love wine. So to go and try to make a version of it that's not quite there, you really sort of get someone's favorite song on a CD and
Yeah.
scratching it and just you can't listen to it anymore. So I understand where that sentiment comes from.
I think you make a really good point there. And one of the things that I hope people take away from listening to this podcast and listening to founders like you is that when it comes to low and no and light alcohol drinks, trying to find a direct comparison is it's so you're taking yourself down a path where you're going to face some disappointments, and it's also quite unfair to both the brands and to yourself to put that expectation on to these drinks. People have been fermenting wine for centuries and beers for centuries and have found these techniques to come up with these drinks that people have gotten to know and have been drinking for decades and decades. And then along comes brands like yourselves who are doing something completely new. We're building this industry as day by day as we go along. There's new and crazy and unique things coming out all the time. And so trying to say, but it doesn't taste like wine, it's almost like comparing two different things. You're not going to get what you were looking for before, but if you start trying to look for what you like in what you're tasting, then you're going to get a chance to have these amazing experiences.
I think, yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think you need to reframe just the way you're thinking about it or approaching it because you're going like during this time of the day or with this food, I really enjoyed that, or I want something that goes well with it, or I want something yummy in this occasion. It's the same way as you think about when you feel like something to eat. You got to think about non-alcoholic drinks the same way, and it makes it very simple at that point. So, and yeah, you're not going to have a steak in a de-alcoholized red. It's just not happening.
Yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely, and people do, and food pairings is one of the big areas as well. I'm doing some research with Lono Nation at the moment, and one of the questions that's coming back quite often is drinks and food pairings. Obviously, we've talked a lot about your amazing ingredients within the non-range. Is the whole eating experience part of who this drink is for? Are you making it so that people can have amazing meal experiences, or is this more for your let's sit down with a friend and have a chat and a glass of something? Who is it that non is for in that regard?
It's for both of those things, and it's also it needs to be really, and I think it needs to be really simple and easy to do. So,
Yeah.
and I think you need to feel good about what you've got. So that's why it's always been in a 750 ml bottle. You bottles at the same height as everyone else. You can put it in a wine glass if it's not triggering for you, of course, if you've had any issues with alcohol. But yeah, I recommend definitely a stem wine glass, and you just sit there and it's pink bubbles, and it goes great with food, and that enhances it again. But it's fine to drink on its own as well, and that's what's really important. And that's why we put so much time and effort and build our facility into making sure that the drinks come out how we want them to come out, and give customers a good experience. Like in the UK, it's 20 quid a bottle. Like I've always thought about it that some people get paid 20 quid an hour. So, if someone's going to give you an hour of their life, bloody make it good if they're drinking your product as well. And I honestly believe in that.
I love that. I love that. That is a fantastic sentiment and a great way to think about how we are serving people, and we're providing something for them to make their lives better and to make it worth the money that they are parting with, regardless of
Definitely.
whether it's got alcohol in it or not. I absolutely love that. Um, you mentioned there, putting it into a wine glass if it's not triggering for people. I wondered if we could have just a brief chat about your own experiences. I'll preface this by saying that this podcast is not a recovery podcast. This is not a sobriety podcast. I am not about telling people that they shouldn't drink or that it's evil or any of those things. This is just about the amazing drinks that people can have, but also how they can fit into people's lives. Um, and I wondered what your own experiences were with really getting to grips with low and no drinks. As I mentioned before we pressed record, I saw in a previous conversation that you were speaking with somebody about your ADHD. And I was interested to find out, because a lot of people in this space who speak to me say that they also have ADHD, and it's played a part in their choices to look at their drinking habits. And I wondered if that was something that you'd experienced.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place with this because I do like wine, and I do I'm not anti-drinking. I think there needs to be a time when you're having a lunch and you don't want to get hammered, but the lunch is still going, or the dinner, and you want something that goes really well with it. So I think for me that's really important. And then when I was younger and having ADHD, it's like, there was all sorts of abuse going around of alcohol and everything as well. And then, giving people better options and having access to it to myself, great. I can consider it for sure. The hard bit for me is that when you drink your work, it's actually not that enjoyable as well. So I
Oh,
want
okay.
so I want some better options out there as well. Being in Australia with the island, so everything goes to the US or everything comes to the UK, but not everything comes to Australia as well. So um, yeah, a lot of great stuff out there. Um, and yeah, I wouldn't say I have a healthy relationship with it at all, but yeah, it just is what it is, and
Yeah.
can't help
Did you
it.
find that alcohol made your ADHD worse, or made situations, or was it the other way around? Sort of, your ADHD led you to wanting to have a few more drinks to sort of maybe plateau yourself.
I was on the few more side of things, and
Okay.
the numbing of the senses and all those sorts of things for
Yeah.
sure. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, and it's sad, isn't it, that people will use alcohol to numb the, the senses, or the bad stuff. But the flip side of that is that it also numbs the good stuff as well, and you
totally,
know you can't sort of pick and choose what bits it cuts out for you, and that's why I think these drinks like yours are fantastic, and why I do this podcast, because if you can have that moment, have that wine moment, have that wine glass, and fill it with something delicious, and feel like you're getting great value, then that can help people, whether it's because they have ADHD, whether because they have a dependency, or whether they just have a 3-year-old who's home and then they want to make sure that they can, keep a clear head.
totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all of those things, and I've got friends now that are sending me messages, and I've never thought that they would drink non-alc. And he's like, I'm not going to drink for 6 months. I've got your stuff now, and I'm just like, who are you? Like, it's like it is as it becomes more available, and as restaurants adopt it more, and
Yeah.
it's only going restaurants will say we don't have customers for that. It's like you don't have anything. You don't know. But now Guinness Zero is the number one selling beer in the UK. So it's just like, wow, it's not a trend anymore.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's a point that is often made. And I was actually speaking to the chap I was interviewing last week from um, sorry, last week when I was talking to Brad Compton from Session Spirit, which is a 25% gin. And he was saying that it's the same thing in terms of what customers are asking for and what bartenders or um, managers are telling him. And they're saying that people aren't asking for it, so they don't stock it. But if people don't know that it's there to be asked for, then they won't ask for it and you'll never stock it. And people will just go home with their hands in their pockets and you'll have given them a glass of water.
Yeah, and truly believe, and we've seen this and done some little trials ourselves of it. If you don't have your online menus updated now, then it's the same way that people would look at for vegans, like, oh, we're going out with my friend, I don't have any vegan options, we'll go book somewhere else that has vegan options. Your online menu is the billboard for how you're going to get people in, and people are checking that stuff before they come. And you've got your open tables, and I don't know what the most popular one is in the UK. It might be open table as well, but people are checking that shit, and they're like, and you need to have something. You need to go, hey, we care, and you're going to come here, and you're going to be. It's hospitality at the end of the day, and we're going to be hospitable. Like it's fairly simple. It's in the name.
Yeah, the clue's in the name. And it's people are looking ahead. People are saying, I want to go out, I want to have a nice time with my friends, but I need to have something that I can drink as well. And so people are wanting to check. And it's no good, you're right, just having, so even if you've got a good selection on the bar, first of all, put it on the bar, not in the fridge at the back, at the bottom, where none of the staff ever see it and nobody knows, and old lemons go to die. Put it in ice shot for people, make it special, make it seem like it's there on purpose, and then tell people about it and train the bar staff and train the wait staff so that they can talk to people about it. Because a lot of people are still quite embarrassed or shy or nervous about asking for non-alc drinks in bars. And it always still shocks me because I guess because I'm so in it, and I don't know about you. When you're surrounded by something, it's like you were saying earlier on. When you're just drinking your own stuff all the time, you're like, okay, I've had this. Let's, because I see it all the time. And I think I can't believe people are still not feeling comfortable enough to ask, but they're not. They need help. Like I don't know what it's like over there in Oz. In terms of the bars and how this message is getting through to people. What's the reception like for drinks like yours in Australia?
So we kicked off the category and sort of leveled up the level of the drinks for a non-alc menu, and kind of for something to go with food and be ready to serve and make it more casual and faster. Like we offer a great solution for that. It's the same in the US and it's the same in the UK as well. And I think it is about speed, feeling confident to recommend things. Also, a lot of non-alc is still spirits. Beer's beer. We won't talk about beer, but spirits, it's like, what do I do with it? Like how do I mix it? And there's a lot of training and education that needs to happen. For us, we kind of avoid a little bit of that because we just have something you pour in a glass and away you go. Um, and in terms of people's mindset and being afraid to ask. I don't probably see it that much here anymore in Australia. I just like, what do you got that's non-alcoholic? And then like, we got this or whatever it is. So it's very much Australia. I think the UK is the most developed. Australia is not far behind. Like every venue has a non-alc menu now, so a beer, wine, spirit, non-alcoholic cocktail, whatever it is. And then the US is just about to kick off, so it's all just starting over there.
So you think the US is still just in that kickoff phase, and they're still sort of catching up? Do you?
I don't think they're catching up. It's just, I think it's just about to go. There's a lot of
Okay.
products there and a lot of things in the market, and it's a very big grocery off-premise play for a lot of brands there. But I still think that the restaurants might not have had the quality that they needed in the market to do something that goes with the level of service and you know food they pump out.
Yeah, I mean, my limited understanding of distribution in the US suggests to me that it's quite difficult over there. I think because it seems like, and again, I don't know what it's like in Australia, but here in the UK, if you find one or two distributors, you can cover pretty much the whole of the country. They can get things out to various places. But I know that in the US, like each state has a different set of rules about who can import, who can export. It's import and export over state lines, and it's quite a. It just sounds like a messy over there. I mean, what's it
Oh,
like in Oz? Can you get things to? It's a big country, right?
yeah, so you have a wholesaler here, so not too dissimilar to the UK. So you can go to that wholesale channel, where you could self-distribute a few of the brands essentially. So you just have the wholesaler that moves the boxes for you. Probably not too dissimilar to the UK. So us for the UK, we have an importer, and then we can be in additional wholesalers' books as well. In the US, we are the importer into the US, so we produce the stock and we import it in ourselves because what you're saying is, and you're rightly saying, it is absolute fucking pain in the ass. But how, how how it works is there's a three-tier system, but that's for alcohol. So basically, it has to be an importer, a distributor, and then the account. But in Texas, there's four tiers. In New York, you're not allowed to sell non-alcoholic products. If you have a spirits and wine license, you can only sell in grocery stores. So you can't buy gin and tonic in the same shop in New York. It's crazy.
What?
So that's an old prohibition law they never got rid of. In Pennsylvania,
Oh,
the state owns all the stores. I think they got about 550 liquor chain stores, kind of like, Majestic, if you will, something like that. They've got 500 of them, but the state owns them all, so you sell it to the government. It's every state's different.
that just sounds impossible to navigate. I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, if your company could be set up somewhere, but if your warehouse is in California and you sell to Texas, it's basically like you're exporting. You don't pay any sales tax. That's all weird. I don't understand it.
How bizarre.
Mm.
How bizarre, how bizarre. Let's get back to yourself and to Non, but in a slightly different way. So I'm going to show those who are watching on the video will be able to see this. And then for those who are listening, I'm going to hopefully ask Aaron to describe. On the top of this bottle here is a very simple looking stopper, one that I've not seen in a style before. It's got like a round white ball, which is a semicircle on the top, and just a small silver cage. Can you tell me about this stopper? Because it's bloody amazing.
So it took me 2.5 years to get it right. We got some industrial engineers and are much smarter than me. I wasn't happy with everything that was on the market. So everything for sparkling has got a spring loading system in it or a mechanical system in it. So the tops pop off, or they're not that efficient. If you go to the park and you open a bottle, you get home, the thing's in the back seat of your car. Like they don't work. And also they break and they're a very throwaway item. So I was like, let's not have any moving parts in it whatsoever. So in theory, it was should be simple, look simple. It was the worst decision ever. Like it had to be 0.01 of a millimeter, completely perfect, and you cut away a little bit of steel, and then the rubber didn't work, and it was just a nightmare. I think we went through about 20 iterations of it. 3D printing and all, and you name it. And then I remember they call it a golden sample before you go to production. I was like, here's the golden sample, awesome. And then fit, no scratching, great. And then Nick, our head of beverage, tipped it on its side and it leaked. And I started
Ah,
crying.
not what you want.
Fuck. I was like, oh no. And everyone's like, I told you it wasn't going to work. I'm like, I'll show you. We'll fix this. Anyway, we fixed it. So holds the carbonation for 7 days. It outperforms any other sparkling stopper on the market. It's super simple. It can lie down sideways in your fridge, won't come off, can roll around your car, take it to the park. It's a lot more versatile and there's no mechanical parts, so it can't break as well. So
It's
there's
absolutely brilliant.
less wastage.
I'm gonna open it now and by the microphone. You can hear how much carbonation has been left inside. So you just pull it slight from the side,
Yeah.
and it's still got that pop. And that's what you want, because there is nothing worse than opening a bottle of bubbles or anything sparkling, and then you can't keep it fresh. And then just to show people who are on the video, you just slide it back on, and that's it. That's absolutely amazing. And we can buy that here in the UK on the website?
Yep. I bloody hope so. I think the stopper set should be online and live. I'll check that, but yeah, it should. I think it is. Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. So speaking of the website, Aaron, I know I mentioned it earlier on, but both here in the UK, at home for you in Australia, and we do have a lot of listeners in America as well. Where do people go to find out more about your amazing drinks and to obviously buy some bottles to try?
So it's non.world, same as our Instagram handle. But if you just put that in, it'll know you're in the UK or the US, and it'll go, do you want to go to the US store or the UK store? So don't buy from the Australian store. It's a long way away from all those places and very expensive to ship. We're not paying for it. So anyway, go to the local store.
Fair enough. And are you in any physical stores, or are you going to be sticking with the e-commerce side of things? Because I know it's a whole nother ball ache, really, trying to get onto the shelves.
We're 90% of our business is in the on and off premise. We're only 10% online. It's a very small part of our business. So yeah, the UK it's on Deli, which is online, but you know there's some other little sort of delis and stuff that are starting to pick it up now. Um, I think we're nearly there with Fortnum and Mason. Just in Dalesford, I think Selfridges is nearly there as well. So a lot of great stuff happening there, and in the US as well. So we just don't go into grocery straight away. We don't want to go into there. So we want to really support we're an independent business, so we want to support independence and give them first run at it and stuff as well, and get great restaurants too. So you have to forgive me, I don't know how many how many stores are in, but yeah, it feels good.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense as well with a brand like yours, because it's when you've got these amazing flavor combinations and when you've got this unique offering, it's something that needs to be talked about as well. People need to experience it and get to know it. And I'm sure, if you're in restaurants, in the on trade, you're in bars, you can get the teams behind what you're doing. Your teams can go in, or your reps can go in and give them tastings and training so that they can really champion it and talk about it, rather than it just sitting on a shelf in Sainsbury's or Coles or anything else, and people walking past and not really understanding what it's all about.
Yeah, no, that does make a lot of sense for us at the start, and we'll take our time and get it right and build a really sustainable business before we end up sort of looking at those. So we're year five in Australia, and we still haven't done any major national grocery. So doesn't make it's not part of our strategy right now.
Yeah. So what is next for non-world then? Oops, what is your sort of uh, is there a 5-year plan? Is there an end goal, or are you just sort of cruising and keeping on?
Um, we've got a couple of new products coming out that are more focused on occasion, a little bit different from what I said before, like in our way, but also going, hey, we need to do a still red. Like people want it. We did a collab which was a still red, and everyone's like, oh, this is what we've been looking for. This is what we've been looking for. It's like, all right, let's give the people what they want. So anyway, we've got a still red coming out next year. Um,
Amazing.
and another sparkling as well. And then I've got about 5 or 6 other things I want to do outside of the bottle for brand building point of view, like the stopper, but very interesting ideas. Some are probably just dumb, but I'm going to do them anyway. So yeah, we're doing that, and then our focus is to get more distribution here in Australia and start to play in national sort of liquor chains. That'll be next year, and then just focusing on the US and really getting that right and starting to build and develop that. And then we'll start to add additional resource and people on the ground in the US. So we've got 4 at the moment, so they'll probably double next year. And um, yeah, we're working on some pretty interesting partnerships as well at the moment. So there's plenty to do.
That's amazing. That sounds like quite a lot. First question: will that red be available in the UK as well?
I'm just gonna have to be. Is that good?
I think it's going to have to be, right. You heard it here first, guys. It's coming. Um, it sounds like you've got a lot of amazing plans, lots of exciting things going on, and I appreciate you've got to sort of play your cards close to your chest. This is more of a question we were mentioning earlier on before. You've got a 3-year-old.
Yeah,
You're building this brand, you've been going for 5 years, you've got some more plans to expand both within the bottle and without. How do you find the time to manage it all? Because kids aren't easy. They're
yeah.
selfish, they're smelly, they're demanding. Love you, kids. Um,
They're obviously at
how,
school.
yeah, off you go. Uh, how are you bringing it all together and sort of, keeping
Uh,
keeping on,
hanging on
keeping
by a
on?
thread. Hanging on by a thread. I'm not gonna dress it up. It's not easy. Yeah, I go through like good patches and bad patches where I'm in the gym. There's other times I'm just like, I can't even like get out of bed today. I do, but it's just I get up at like 4:35 in the morning and I might get an hour alone for my whole day. So I was just like, I'll take that. So I just have coffee and yeah, try to go in the gym and I should socialize more, and I don't know. There's lots of things I should do, and you just where's the hours in the day? Where's it come from? So
Yeah.
I know you're going to make the time and all the cliches and all that sort of stuff, but I don't know where it is right now. So I don't have a good routine to share and any tips or tricks. I'm afraid. I'll be really honest about that.
No, absolutely. No, I asked because obviously people in Lono Nation are listening to this podcast and they're looking for drinks to try, but also a lot of other founders listen and a lot of other brands and those who are starting up as well. And I myself am in the same situation. I've got a 5 and a 7-year-old, and it's true. Where do you find the hour and the time? This morning, I was awake about quarter to 6. The kids normally wake up about an hour later. And so I was just sat in bed on my laptop going, right, I've got some quiet time to get some stuff done. I've got to get this done before I have to get on with the rest of the day. And it's just really bloody hard, isn't it? Just to try and find that time. And you're right, there
Totally.
aren't enough hours in the day.
Yeah, well, I wake up in the morning and there's all the US stuff that's been happening all day, so you've got to deal with that. Then the Australian team wakes up and gets in, and you're like, oh shit. And then the UK kicks off later on in the afternoon, and you're like, oh, this is
They're just coming
relentless.
at you from all sides.
Yeah.
Oh,
But you got big dreams, you got to just spend the time to do it, I suppose. So just go
true.
for it.
True, true. Well, speaking of spending the time and doing something for yourself, it's time for my last question, please, Aaron. So, first of all, thank you very much for joining me today. It has been awesome
You're
chatting to
welcome.
you.
Thank you for
Um,
having me. I appreciate it.
you're more than welcome. Before you go, the last question is my barbecue question. So, it is, I don't know what the weather is like in Australia at the moment. As I said, over here, it's a bit
It's
crappy.
awesome today. Yeah.
Awesome today. So, there will be barbecues up and down the land, no doubt. Um, on days when you might be relaxing and you're off to a mate's house to have a barbie and you're bringing something to drink with you and you don't feel like drinking alcohol that day, other than the amazing, amazing range of non wines, what other low, no, or light drinks do you tend to enjoy when you're not drinking alcohol?
So you can't get it here, but you can get it in the UK, and I hope Imi brings it over. But Bativo, I think, is probably right up there with one of the best. I had we're the same distributor in Singapore, so I had the original formulation. I was like, oh, it's pretty cool. And then I met up with Imi when I was in the UK in March, and I was like, and had it properly, and I was like, this shit's good. So anyway, Amy, get Bativo over to Australia. So I really like that. And I'm really interested to try Ben's new product, the Silver, as well. So that he's just about to release. So they're probably the two, well, one I haven't had, but I reckon I'd take Bativo out. I
Nice.
actually had a street barbecue for Christmas and I had some Bativo when I actually took it out in the street. People were like, oh, it's cool, it's interesting. So I think that's a really good barbecue drink, the aperitif style.
Nice, nice. And what about something maybe for the Australian listeners out there? Because I have very little experience with the Australian Lono market. What sort of what's hitting big or really enjoyable out there at the moment?
Everyone's pretty much drinks heaps normal, which is a non-alc beer,
Heard of that one?
which is which I don't want to say too much, but you might be able to have it soon. So Yeah. So anyway, everyone's drinking that non-alc beer. I think everyone really wants Guinness Zero here as well. But
Oh,
we
you don't
can't
have
get
it there
that
yet.
yet either. We have it in
Ah,
cans, but it's always sold out. It's not like proper on draft. But you can't get beer on non-alc beer on draft here because we run our beer systems way colder than the UK do. So there's no alcohol sort of freezers on the way out. So we can't have beer on tap, yeah, for non-alc. It has to be in a can. So
ah.
there's that. Um, yeah, it's a little bit slim pickings here in Australia. And my other favorite is the guys who are closest to us, but Muri. They're from Copenhagen, MURI. Murray's a dead set legend. The guy owns it, and yeah, that's it. They're doing such a good job for the category. So they're not here, but they're in Singapore. So again, same distributor as us. So anyway, big shout out to Murray, my man. He's good.
Amazing, amazing. Those are some fantastic recommendations. And I've learned some new things that I didn't know about the beer system in Australia. Because I know that you have to keep yours cold because you're a lot warmer than we are over here. But I didn't know that it meant that there was no way to have alcohol-free beers on draft. So business opportunity for somebody out there to have come up with a system that the Australians will allow to have non-alc beer on draft, because it's a big thing. Like, people want a pint of non-alc on draft. It's one of the things I hear all the time. But
Totally, yeah. So if you look at the beer tap systems in the UK, our ones
mm,
are like frosted over. They're like got ice on them. They're really cold. That's when I noticed it. I was like, oh, that's why. That's why you can get on draft here. So yeah.
there you go. Aaron, thank you so much. You have been a pleasure to speak to. You've shared a lot of insight and so much enthusiasm, and I genuinely love your drinks. And we'll be keeping an eye out for more. And I can't wait to try that red. So thanks so much, my darling.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.